Trigger warning. This is about to depict self-harm, okay? Because I'm going over a PragerU video. It's called How to End Systemic Racism. I surely hope that we're going to get a nuanced take on systemic racism. Surely we're not going to misappropriate leftist terminology to try and bolster your own dipshit conservative narrative. No. PragerU wouldn't do that. They're a university. I mean, not a real university, but they identify as one.
There is systemic racism in this country, and
True.
people of color are paying a terrible price because of it.
True. Yeah, good point.
The elites who have instigated this moral crime deserve to be exposed for what they've done.
Oh, of course. They have to get the black girl to talk about systemic racism. It just wouldn't sit right, you know, if it was a white guy up here saying systemic racism isn't real. But now that you have the black woman, you have your little token, and there you go. You can say whatever dumb shit you want. Because she's black. You're not going to criticize a black person, are you? Yes.
The sooner we call attention to them, the sooner we expose their regressive ideas, the sooner we live in a more just society.
Amen.
No truth, no peace. Here's how bad it is.
Amen.
At Columbia University, black students have a separate graduation from white students. In many...
Wait. That's not systemic racism. Also, I'm going to Google this. We're going to fact check PragerU. We're going to fact check PragerU, okay? Post misrepresents Columbia's multicultural graduation ceremonies. Columbia University will supplement its regular 2021 graduation ceremony with multicultural ceremonies for members of the Latinx, Asian, Black, and other student communities who want to participate. Social media users are misinterpreting these voluntary ceremonies as segregation. The smaller celebratory events held for particular communities are in addition to, not instead of, the main commencement and Class Day graduation ceremonies. In most instances, these smaller multicultural gatherings evolved from ceremonies originally created by alumni, and students. The gatherings are voluntary, open to every student who wants to participate, and have become a highly anticipated and meaningful part of the Columbia graduation. So it's a separate event that's more focused on some of these other cultures. Oh, look, they call out Blair White for lying. Why am I not surprised? Huh. Of course, Blair Dumbfuck is lying as well. So no, look at this. A teeny little article, guys. You just got to do a little research, you know? So no, this is not a separate graduation. Anybody can attend, and it is optional. 26 seconds in, we already have a fucking lie, and also this is not systemic racism.
Graduation from white students. In many other colleges, black students are encouraged to live in their own separate dorms. Students in many New York City government schools are separated by color during the school year.
No. This was, again, an optional program that was separated. Now, I still don't really like the idea of separating people on racial grounds in any way, but, like, is this really that different than when you, like, separate, like, the boys and the girls when you're having, like, a sex ed conversation or something? I don't know. But again, this is fucking optional, dude. Why are you guys so triggered about stuff that's optional, you know? Like, I don't agree with separating people on the basis of race, but it's optional. Systemic racism is because of past historical racist policies that are still negatively affecting black people today. Systemic racism is shit like the criminal justice system, which disproportionately sentences black people to death row as opposed to white people who've committed the same crimes. Notice how those examples of real systemic racism are not a choice. Black people aren't opting for the death penalty. They're disproportionately sentenced to death row, which is an issue of systemic racism. They cannot control it. Briefly segregating classes or briefly segregating optional programs is a far cry from systemic racism. 37 seconds and now, more lies.
State governments put regulations in place that make it harder for minorities to start businesses.
What? 2020 has hurt minority small businesses owners the most. Oh, okay. They're talking about putting regulations in regards to COVID and then saying that it disproportionately hurt black people. Yeah, that's because of previous systemic issues, because black people tend to be in poor socioeconomic circumstances if we're talking about broader statistics here. State regulations, you make it sound like they're writing regulations like, let's make it so that black people can't actually start a business anymore. First of all, if that happened, that would actually be a pretty good example of real systemic racism. Second of all, that's not what happened. We're talking about COVID regulations that disproportionately hurt black people because of previous systemic racism. Holy shit. You are so dumb.
National Museum declares hard work and ambition to be white values.
Nope, wrong. That is not true. Also, let's just assume for the sake of argument that she's 100% right and they said that it was hard work was a white value. How is that systemic racism? These people don't know what words mean. I say this all the time, but half of conservatives' problems could be solved if they just picked up a fucking dictionary. Go sit down and read Webster's instead of reading Breitbart all day, dumb hoe.
One of America's two major political parties assumes that many black people are incapable of obtaining a driver's license or an ID card.
Notice how she does this? They just assume that black people can... No, it's because of socioeconomic circumstances make it so that black people are disproportionately harmed by putting kinds of restrictions on voting when it comes to using an ID. Yeah, believe it or not, black people are disproportionately negatively impacted when it comes to obtaining a driver's license. We aren't racist for pointing out the problem. You're racist for trying to ignore it so you can make some sweet cash from your oil billionaires.
In Oregon, black students are told that math is a white construct, all but guaranteeing failure in this essential skill. In Baltimore, less than 10% of minority students can read at grade level, all but guaranteeing failure in this essential skill.
Wait, what? Why are you mixing this up with actual real problems? If less than 10% of minority students can read at grade level, that speaks volumes to poor socioeconomic circumstances, because if you're in a poor neighborhood, your tax dollars fund the schools. So if you are poor, you are not going to get as good of an education because your school tends to be shittier. I hate the fact that they're bringing up like some dumb shit like this math thing and then mixing it with legitimate systemic racism.
In Oakland, no student is allowed to get a D or an F. Instead, everyone is simply promoted to the next grade whether they know the material or not.
Okay, let's look it up. All right, district have decided to limit the use of Ds and phased out Fs in grading. High schoolers who fail a test or homework assignment can get a do-over or more time to complete the work. So one, this has zero anything to do with race. Why are you bringing race into this? It literally has nothing to do with race. Second of all, why are you saying they can just pass no matter what? They can't. They get a longer time for a do-over. Believe it or not, but having these rigid grading standards doesn't actually result in a higher education. It puts people more, it makes people more stressed, and it makes people more likely to just try and work to obtain a higher grade, and then they forget everything that they've remembered just so that they can get their good grade. Right now we have a system where we give 1,000,000 points for 1,000,000 pieces of paper that students turn in without much attention to what they're actually learning. Yes, this is actually a good idea. Has nothing to do with race. What?
Instead, everyone is simply promoted to the next grade whether they know the material or not.
Lie. They're not promoted to the next level. You're lying right now. But you know, I know, you gotta get those oil billionaire bucks.
City councils demonize their own police departments, then vote to cut police budgets. Crime and murder skyrocket. The victims are almost all minorities.
What does this have to do with systemic racism? You realize that people wanted to cut the police budgets because minorities are disproportionately affected by police brutality. At this point, she's just saying things. I know that, like, Dennis Prager was probably, like, you know, high on his ivermectin when he wrote the script for this black girl to read off so it doesn't look racist, but Jesus Christ, what the fuck are you talking about? This is not systemic racism, dude.
Prosecutors refuse to prosecute hardened criminals. Instead, they let the criminals back on the streets to prey on law-abiding, hardworking citizens. Again, mostly black people.
What? Notice how they give no specifics. Prosecutors refuse to prosecute hardened criminals. Let's see what this says. Is this what you're talking about? After crime plummeted in 2020, they'll stop drug and sex prosecutions? That's good. They stopped non-violent prosecutions for the coronavirus. Dude, you know it's bad when you can read a fucking headline that disproves what PragerU is spewing. Hardened criminals. We're talking about drug and sex workers being criminalized, okay? Come on. The drug war has disproportionately negatively impacted black people repeatedly since it's been instated. And you know what? It was put in place directly to try and fuck over the black community. God, these dumb shit liars.
Instead, they let the criminals back on the streets to prey on law-abiding, hardworking citizens.
I like how they show the guy with like a gun and a knife when then we just read it was like non-violent crimes.
Mostly black people. That's only a few of many examples. It's shocking, but commonplace. Every day in every major city, People of color are living in this oppressive, patronizing environment. These prejudices, literally prejudgments, make it more and more difficult for Black people and other minorities to improve their lives, the very opposite of what the goal should be.
Do you think that Black people being disproportionately affected by the drug war and police brutality restricts Black people from being able to live their lives? Oh, right. When it comes to that, when it comes to the real issues, then it's just pull yourself up by the bootstraps, you lazy heathen. Just, stop listening to your gangster rap, pull your pants up and go get a job. Huh. But then when they can actually virtue signal and say, look, you see, we actually care about the Black people. Well, then all of a sudden, it's totally acceptable.
In other words, the very people claiming to have Black people's and minorities' best interest at heart are instituting the very policies and attitudes that are holding them back.
You haven't demonstrated that any of these things are holding Black people back. You listed off a bunch of dumb shit and then expect us to just take it, which, in fairness, most of your dumb shit conservative viewers do. They just are like, or. They start clapping like seals when they see a Black girl spewing conservative talking points. I get it. But you haven't demonstrated how this is actually hurting Black people. Most of these policies would benefit Black people.
Sounds like systemic racism to me. And it makes you think that we're not moving forward.
Wouldn't you love to just ask this woman what systemic racism is?
As a pluralistic, equal opportunity nation, but backward into Jim Crow. Now, here's the kicker.
What?
It's not those horrible, nasty, bigoted, misogynistic, authoritarian nationalists on the right who are imposing these crushing rules and policy prescriptions.
Oh, you see, guys, it's the authoritarian right is actually A-okay. Because the authoritarian right is the one preaching to pull yourself up by the bootstraps. Which, by the way, is very racist in and of itself, because if you take that mindset, then the only conclusion you have left is that Black people are stupid and unable to pull themselves up by the bootstraps. I don't believe that. I think that Black people are disproportionately victimized by systems at play here. But you people don't believe that. You think that Black people need to just do better. And why have they not done better for a long, long time? Well, I guess they're just dumb. You're the racists here.
It's the woke left. The side that I revered as a beacon of tolerance. The side that I thought was on the right side of history.
Oh, guys, she used to be a liberal. I would love to just ask her, like, okay, what were some of your old liberal positions? She'd probably be like, I went on Twitter and I thought that the trans flag was colorful, and these people have no fucking principles.
A few years ago. In fact, I was so committed, I got a Black Lives Matter tattoo. I still have it. But then I had to face reality. It's the ideology of the left that has set back young students of color with lower education standards, that calls for pulling cops out of high crime areas and replacing them with social workers.
They have not demonstrated how any of this would negatively harm Black people, where I can pull up statistics. I will pull up statistics showing you that Black people are disproportionately affected by police violence. Notice how they're not able to show anything and we're able to be like, hey, sometimes having too many police actually result in a disproportionate negative effect on Black people. That is according to the statistics. Again, I know that you like to take Dennis Prager's dick and like shove it up your ass and not think critically about anything, but yeah, you're just like saying this and expecting your brain dead audience to be like, oh my God, the woke left. You never explained why it's bad.
That states that skin color is more important than character. More important than anything. Yes, it is the woke left that is systemically racist, not America. The race hoax epidemic is proof. There have been dozens of these hoaxes over the last few years. Nooses on garages, the N-word on dorm rooms.
Wait, was the noose hung on the garage ever proven to be a hoax?
This is MAGA country taunts on cold city streets.
Ah, yes, where the guy is now in jail for faking a hate crime. Yeah, you see, that just proves there's not racism.
Virtually every one of them has been fake. The demand for racism exceeds the supply. If racism against Black people or any other minority group was rampant, you wouldn't have to fake it to convince people how bad things are. Did anyone fake racism in the South in the 1950s?
Oh my God.
But there is so little now that the race-obsessed woke left has manufactured unconscious racism and microaggressions to fool people into believing America is systemically racist.
So that's not what systemic racism necessarily means. There is something to be said about subconscious racism, and that's because racist ideas that we are oftentimes taught from a very young age impact the decisions we make on a day-to-day basis. This is why I bring up the study about how black-sounding names are way less likely to receive a callback when applying for jobs, and that's why that study is so important, is because it demonstrates that even if these business owners aren't like overt racist white supremacists who constantly watch PragerU, then they might still have subconscious racist beliefs, which is why they're more drawn towards the white-sounding name. Jake, John, Jingleheimer Schmidt, you know, that shit all sounds familiar to them, so they're more likely to call those people back, whereas they're less likely to call back people with a black-sounding name. So subconscious racism absolutely exists. And again, your denial of this is resulting in a ton of negativity being thrown on black people. Because of your dumbass refusing to acknowledge the fact that subconscious racism exists, then could you actually answer, why are black people disproportionately sentenced to death row? Why? Is it because they're just more naughty and they deserve it more? Can you tell me? I'm not saying every judge is an overt racist moron, but sometimes racist ideas are subconscious and they play a role in the decisions made, and those decisions negatively impact black people. But again, I know that that's far too nuanced for you and your oil billionaire money.
That's not to say racism doesn't exist. Of course it does. There will always be small-minded people, but their numbers are as small as their minds. And in case you're thinking of George Floyd, please know that even Minnesota's leftist attorney general admitted the incident had nothing to do with Floyd being black.
It doesn't have to have anything to do with him being black. Oh my God. Yes, you see, that's the liberal talking point. Derek Chauvin kneeled on George Floyd's neck because he was a black man. No, it's that George Floyd's death was indicative of a systemic issue where black people are disproportionately victimized by police brutality. The individual officers don't need to be racist for black people to disproportionately fall victim to these issues. And when black people are disproportionately falling victim, then that thing, police violence, is in effect racist. You don't have to have a racist bone in your body to be a cop, or to shoot a black person, or to kill a black guy by kneeling on his neck. However, when that disproportionately occurs against black people, it is in effect racist, because it is black people who are disproportionately suffering at the hands of that system.
My father and millions of Africans didn't immigrate to America so that they could live in a racist society. They immigrated so that they could have opportunities that were only available to them here.
Ah, yes, the classic, why would you leave your ravished, war-torn country to come to a country where it's not as bad? Surely it can't be racist.
So, to all the leftists out there, I understand why you believe what you believe. I was once one of you.
No, you weren't.
But it's time to ask yourself some questions.
Oh,
Is it really helping black people to tell them they're not as responsible for their actions as anyone else?
Well, unfortunately, you tend to take that approach because you think that black people need to just pull themselves up by the bootstraps, which again, since they haven't done that, that only follows. The logical conclusion of that claim is that black people are simply not as responsible for their actions as anyone else. Second of all, I don't believe that black people are less responsible for their actions, but I think that unfortunately what happens is even if black people try to live by the conservative mantra of pulling themselves up by the bootstraps, then maybe they're going to go get a job. Maybe they're going to go apply for a job. That's a good place to start, right? But black people are less likely to receive callbacks if they have a black-sounding name. They are being responsible, but they are still facing disproportionate negative outcomes because of racist systems.
What else? Isn't it condescending, if not outright bigoted, to expect less from somebody purely based on their race?
Yes, it is. But recognizing that based on someone's race, they are less likely to be able to achieve certain outcomes because of racist systems put there historically, that is not bigoted. You people like to conflate that, though, because you want to get on the moral high ground and lie that racism isn't actually a big deal while furthering racism.
Isn't it clear that we should judge each person on their merits, not their skin color?
Yes, you should judge people based on their own merits and their character, but sometimes it's important to look at how race plays a role in black people receiving certain outcomes. That's not racist.
Wouldn't that do more to create an equitable society than 100 government programs? Yes, there really is systemic racism, and it's hurting the country, but it's not coming from the direction you think. Once you realize that, everything changes. I'm Lepanobi for Prager University.
Oh, wow. And what's funny, too, is she has a black-sounding name. She would actually be less likely to get a callback for a job. The irony of this is so funny. Also, what do you mean 100 government programs? Also, what do you mean it's not coming from the one side you think it is? Systemic racism is furthered by virtually everybody. It's not coming from the right or coming from the left. It is furthered by everyone. There are some liberal judges that have subconscious racism. This is such a reach, bro. But yeah, there you go. PragerU, furthering racism by using a black token, their little puppet, to basically read off Dennis Prager's script. So there you have it, folks. Wow, I'm deeply moved. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and click the bell so you get notified when I drop a new video.